Welcome back to the Best Worst Thing podcast. I'm your host, Josh Walewa. Thank you for joining me along for the 5th season. Today's going to be a solo episode, so I am the guest for today, and I thought I'd take a little time to talk about somebody really, really important to me, and that person is Esther Joan Rwakijuma, Queen Esther. Those of you who are close to me know that my mother, Esther, passed away on January 2nd of this year, and it was probably the worst thing that had happened to me or has happened to me at this life. I know I have shared in previous podcasts examples of my best worst thing, and I really try to figure out how I wanted to honor my mother. And I thought what I would do is I would share some lessons from Esther, some things that Esther taught me, or at least how I interpreted them, and passed them along to anyone who's listening who would like to know a little bit more about my mom and about her wisdom, her strength, her grace, and all the things that have helped me in my life, and hopefully they'll help you too. You know, I've experienced a lot of friends who've lost parents and loved ones, and it's pretty devastating. But on the outside, it's really hard to connect to, especially when you're not going through it yourself. It's all you can do is be there for them and show care. And then when you go through it, especially at this time and stage in my life where this is happening a little bit more frequently around me, it's hard to swallow. And it is the worst thing in the moment. You know, I explained it to friends that I felt like my brain was broken and that I would never recover that day when I heard that news. But as time has gone by, I've had to really reflect on her life and her impact on me. And I've realized that her passing has given me a chance to really assimilate and sink in some of those strong lessons. She's given me new motivation and inspiration to move forward in my life and to do good in this world while I'm here in this short, wonderful time that we have left. And so I'm going to take a few moments here and share 5 lessons from Queen Esther. So Esther Joan Rwakijuma was born in Uganda in 1949. And one of the things that really stands out to me is, as long as I can remember, I was born in Uganda, but we came to the United States when I was 1. She left her mother, her father, her aunts and uncles, her cousins, and left here to the United States to start a big life and maybe provide a better opportunity for her children. And what that tells me is that she was thinking beyond herself. With 5 children, or 4 children and 1 on the way, she made a huge sacrifice, knowing that she, in her lifetime, endured the loss of her parents and how difficult that was, and that she was not able to be there during their final hours. I can only imagine how hard it was to leave them all those years ago in 1976. But the lesson that really stands out to me is the idea of being selfless, and that it is bigger than you. Bigger than you for me means many things, but for Esther, Queen Esther, for my mom, it meant her faith. She always knew that there was something bigger to life than herself, than her personal needs, and she always made decisions around things that were bigger than her. She knew that her faith taught her that in her world, God was really important, and that for her, God was love, and that love was the best way that she can live her life. Again, not focused on herself, but focused on other people. So everything Esther did, whether it was moving her small children to the United States, to working 2 to 3 jobs at a time, to spending time with friends or family, to even taking care of even people older than her in her last days, was all about giving back to the world. So what are you doing in your career? What are you doing for your family? What are you doing for your community? That's what my mother did consistently. Made for a wonderful life for her, because she wasn't so self-focused, but she was focused on things being bigger than her. Second lesson that really sinks in for me is living in courage. You know, people often define courage as doing things anyway, even if you're afraid. And I can imagine that my mother leaving Uganda with 4 small children and her spouse at the time was a significant act of courage, going to a place where she knew maybe very few people, and that she would have to start all over with her networks, her career, and everything. And I'm guessing that she stepped out on faith, and she did it even though she was afraid. And I think that that's something that's very difficult to do these days. I think it's easy to say, and it's easy to encourage people to live and act in courage. But when you watch the moves that she made, when she went through a very difficult divorce and had 5 children, and then a grandchild eventually on the way, I can't imagine that Esther felt 100% confident all the time, but she kept moving. And it's really inspirational as I kind of look at my difficulties and setbacks in my life, and I think about what I've gone through. I can't help but think that my mother must have come up in my mind over and over again. Whatever little or big difficulties that I had, whether it was raising one child, going through a divorce, going through difficult work situations, I could always reflect on my mother and how that she had it so much worse and how she was afraid. I'm certain that she was afraid. She was human just like me, yet she did it anyway. She was a very courageous woman. She found ways to invest in properties, even though that was risky. She found ways to travel back and forth to Uganda, to build schools back in Uganda, to put our cousins through schools in Uganda, even though financial security wasn't always a consistent thing or even something she could be confident in. She did it anyway. She stepped out on faith. She stepped out on the idea that even though she was afraid, she could do it anyway. And so I think if Queen Esther was here to give you another piece of advice, it would be, even if you're afraid, if it's good for you, do it anyway. Step out in courage. Have courage. The third lesson that I think Queen Esther taught me, and I want to share with you from Queen Esther, is be generous. Be generous with your time. Be generous with your money. Be generous with your ear to listen to a friend. You know, that's one of the things that I really got a kick out of when listening to my cousins and friends and family. Even one of her former clients at a home that she took care of for her last job working in California, just was so touched by how she was so generous with her time, how she cared for him, this elderly man and his wife, how my mother treated them like family. She was generous with her time. And I don't know about you, because I have about 24 hours in the day, but I feel like my mother must have had 27, because she found time for everybody. She was generous with that time from beginning to end. You know, she spent time with her grandchildren. I found out that she would have occasional conversations with my son, which was incredible to hear. She would go to lunch with my cousin Alan and spend quality time with him, whether he was going through whatever in his life, and she would be a listening ear for him. To her sisters, Nancy, and her sisters, Dora, here in California, actually, and she would always spend time and connect with them. I found that she would go and celebrate people's life achievements. I heard of her going to a graduation of one of her friend's children in Northern California. These are things that, you know, you learn about after the fact, that she was traveling around the country, spending time with people and being generous with her time. But not only that, as we were going through her effects, you know, I found that found documentation of her being generous with her money. Now, my mother, I would say that for today's standards, never made a ton of money, but somehow with the little that she had, she found a way to give. And so, you know, I found just tons of receipts for organizations that she was donating to. She was so generous. What's amazing about that is that as generous as she was, and as little as I would say that she made, especially again with 5 kids, as a single person, I'm sure she would have been just fine. But with 5 kids and then a ton of grandkids, she still found a way to give outside of just her family. She was so generous. And what I found in my life personally is the more I give, the more I receive. And so, you know, even though that's not the motivation necessarily, just the act of being generous with your time and with your resources, you don't have to worry about it running out. For some reason, when my mother left this earth, she had plenty of abundance to give to others, even beyond her time, including just lessons, life lessons that she taught each of us, and things that we could hold on to that would help to make our lives moving forward better and worthwhile. So give, kuha, give, be generous. Lesson number 4. Now, this is a tough one for me because this is something I personally have struggled with. But my mother was one of the most committed people that I know of. She understood the meaning of commitment. My mother was committed to her faith. She had very strong beliefs around her place on this earth and all the things that she had, and she knew where to put that gratitude consistently. She was also committed to her family. You know, all of us have difficulties that we've gone through, and maybe we've even experienced family members who've gone through different struggles. And oftentimes when we encounter friends or family that are going through a particular struggle, maybe we find it a little disheartening and we avoid it, we step away from it. But my mother didn't have that in her. For some reason, my mother found a way to fully commit to her family. All of us, all of her kids, whenever we went through a struggle, she was the first one there. She could fly on a plane, or she could give you a call and give you advice. She was dedicated to just being right next to you and making sure that if you were alone in this world, or if you felt that you were alone in this world, there was at least one person who was committed to you, and that was my mother. Her commitment to her friends was, again, unparalleled. When you saw the people who showed up at her funeral, it was decades and decades of friends who she stayed connected to. She was 100% committed to her friends, and she loved them, and she loved us all. You know, her commitment was unwavering, and I often, again, say that I struggle with this because sometimes, commitment can be conditional. Commitment can look like, well, I will stay committed if these things are in place. But no matter what difficult conversations she had with her kids, no matter how sometimes maybe we were probably the most difficult kids that she could ever have, she never left us. She always stayed committed to us. And I'm really trying to let that lesson sink in here as I share it with you all, whether it's commitment in my work, commitment to my field, commitment to my relationships, commitment to everything is how can I have that level of unconditional commitment that I'm 100% in and moving forward. And so I think as I reflect on her commitment and think about ways in which I can do that, I've doubled down and recommitted to my siblings and my family and my friends, and to be more present to them. And to know that no matter what happens, no matter what they do or I do, I'm staying in it. And I'm committed. I'm committed to my work and my career. I have a passion to give. And it's hard. It's stressful. It's, my work can weigh you down with some of the things that you have to deal with and navigate. And yet commitment means that no matter how difficult it is, you stick to it. You stay committed. And you stay committed because it's the right thing to do. And ultimately, people benefit from your commitment to them. Things, challenges, goals, staying committed for the long term, even when things are going bad. It's just really critical. Queen Esther was one of the most committed people I know, and I thank her for that. The last lesson that Queen Esther I took from Queen Esther, and I guarantee you there's plenty of people out there who took way more lessons from Queen Esther than I did. But I want to say that the last one is, again, another challenging one. But, if Queen Esther was here and she could tell you about this one, I bet you she can talk for hours on this. It's the idea of forgiveness. So my mother endured some of the most difficult things she endured a marriage that was horrific by most uh, people's, I'm guessing, characteristics are describing of it. She endured loss of family, her parents, her siblings, um, and as life kind of weighed down on her, I could see somebody having a negative attitude who went through all the things that she went through. And I'm guessing there's people who've gone through worse and people who've not gone through as many challenges as she's gone through. But no matter what level of difficulties we go through, it's hard for us when we're going through it. And I think my mother went through some of the worst things. She was around some of the worst things. And some of those people who did those things to her and to us as a family, I personally found a lot of resentments towards some of those things and circumstances. But yet Queen Esther always forgave. She found ways to find forgiveness in her heart. Didn't mean she necessarily had to engage and have continued relationships with people, but she found ways to forgive. And I think what I picked up on near the end of her life was that life was too short to be harboring resentments. She had the right to walk 100% away from some of these people and to write them off, including her children at times, I'm guessing. But she had the most amazing capacity to forgive. And so when I think about that in my life, when I think about some of the resentments that I've held on to, I realize that if I reflect on what Queen Esther shared, then I know that holding on to those resentments means that I can't move forward in my life. And I think that's one of the magical things that she was able to do. She was able to move forward and acquire so many experiences and properties and friends. And she was able to connect with so many things in such a positive way because she was able to let go and forgive. Many people have talked about this idea of forgiveness and at least not holding on to resentments. And again, you can see it in an Instagram post I've done of myself. So you can see it in a meme. You can see speakers talk about it. But if you ever get a chance to know her story, then it's one of the best examples of somebody who lived with the mindset of forgiving others around her. And again, she had plenty to present in this world, but she found a way to forgive others. But what I found that I struggle with as well, which was most impressive about her, was I know that she actively worked on forgiving herself. Queen Esther Rwakijuma, was a human just like the rest of us. She was imperfect, and I'm guessing she made some not so great choices in her life. And at times, her and I had some honest conversations, and she showed some vulnerability and tears with me as she had regrets. The one thing that I remember being able to say to her a couple years ago over the phone was that she was a good mother. I wanted to know that she was a great mother, and that no matter what happened in our lives and, what decisions that maybe she may have made that she regretted, I wanted her to know that she was the best mother that I could have ever had, and I was so fortunate to have her. And my guess is the reason why she was able to move forward in her life was that she actively worked on consistently forgiving herself. I know in my life personally, I've made some significant missteps and horrible decisions. At least that would be the way that I would describe it. But I know that looking at what she endured and what she went through, and thinking about some of the missteps in her life and how she still was able to push through those things, I can only imagine that she gave herself permission to forgive herself. And that in turn has given me permission to forgive myself as well. I think if we're constantly focused in on some of our shortcomings and poor decisions, then it's very difficult to move forward and have a full, productive life where we can be people who can contribute to the world, help others out, and make things right. So having a short memory is really critical. Having a short memory with yourself, taking the lessons, but leaving the pain behind. Both being wronged and falling short of your highest self is just human. But if you can learn to forgive others and to forgive yourself, my guess is you'll have a pretty good life. So that's it. Those are the 5 lessons that I can think of from Queen Esther. It's bigger than you. Have courage, live in courage. Be generous. Be committed. And forgive. I'm certain that if you talk to my siblings, friends, family, her friends' family, there's so many more things that she would have taught, but those are what's standing out right now. And that's what I want to pass to you. My mama, I want to scream so loud for you, 'cause I'm so proud of you, and let me tell you what I'm about to do, mama. You know I act a fool, but I promise you I'm gonna back to school, and I appreciate what you allow from me, and Thank you for listening to the Best Worst Thing podcast. I'm your host, Josh Lewa. Music is produced by Josh One. You can follow him at Boomnote on Instagram and Twitter, and Josh One on Spotify. Our episodes are edited by Cooled Jets Music. You can follow him at Cooled Jets Music on Instagram. Our marketing is designed by Francesca Daniels. You can find her at FrankandKitty24 on Instagram. And our overall design is by Inspired Design with Ryan Daniels. You can find them at getinspired.design on Instagram. Thank you for listening to The Best Worst Thing.
This one's for the good times and this one's for the bad. This one's for the day that was the best we ever had. This one's for my good friends and this one's for my foes, the ones who get up on your skin and do